Welcome to the Leader Lifter podcast. Short conversations to lift you up and encourage you wherever you lead.
So welcome again to the Leader Lifter podcast. My name is Kevin, and I so appreciate you taking the time to join us here today. Thank you to those of you who've been liking and sharing and commenting on this podcast. I really appreciate that, and I really hope that this has been an encouragement to you and a blessing to you wherever you lead. You know, we as leaders, we can be so busy working in our ministries, we can be so busy working in our organizations, we can be so busy working in all the stuff that we have to do. We can sometimes forget that as leaders, we're called to work on these things. We need to take some time and do that. So that's really my heart, especially for my church here at Greenbelt. My heart is really for you as a leader. We have so many great people here serving in so many amazing ways here in our church family. And so for me, this is just a way that I can invest in you a little bit. I wish I could take you all out one by one for a cup of coffee and invest in you, but that's not always possible. So this is just a great way to spend a short bit of time together encouraging you. And again, that was my heart to start this for the church, and hey, if other people can benefit from it and are blessed by it, then hey, that's even better. So I'm really excited about that. Again, if you would just share this on social media, subscribe on YouTube, that would be great. And you can always comment below, or you can send me emails directly with any questions you might have or any topics you might want me to cover. You can email me at kevin@greenbelt.church. Look forward to hearing from you there. Today's topic is something that has been really close to my heart, especially over the last few months. It's something that is really impacting me. It's changing the way I think. It's changing the way I lead. And it's really having a big impact on so many different areas of my life, not just in my leadership, not just in my pastoring duties at the church, but it's really causing me to think in a lot of in a lot of areas of my life. Now, I don't know if this is because I'm just at that funny stage of life. I'm turning 47 in the next couple of weeks, and I'm finding, my teenage kids don't need me as much as they used to. Things are changing. I'm losing my hair. I'm started wearing glasses. All these things are changing right now. Even in my church, my role at the church, as I've been investing in more people and raising up more leaders and equipping the staff, things move really well. I'm not as desperately needed as I used to be. So there's a lot of change going on. And that can be difficult for a lot of people. But for me, it's been quite challenging and quite exciting, really, as I've been really focusing on one key word. And that key word is purpose. I've been focusing the last few months on the idea of purpose. I want you to think about this for a moment. What motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Again, turning 47 soon, I'm having a hard time getting out of bed some mornings, especially the day after I go to the gym. The legs just don't seem to want to get out of bed. But what motivates you? What gets you out of bed? Maybe in your work, what gets you out of bed is just the fact that you have to get there, you got to punch in, and you got to make that paycheck because you got bills to pay. Maybe if you're in school, what motivates you is you just got to get out of bed. You got to get to school so that you're not late, so that you can get some good grades, so that one day you can get a job, so that you can get a paycheck, so you can pay your bills. Or maybe in your marriage, what motivates you is just, I got to please my spouse. I just want my spouse to be really happy. Or what about in your family? Especially if you have little kids, right? What motivates you? It might be, I just have to get out of bed in the morning because I've got dirty diapers to change and I got screaming mouths to feed, right? Or what about in our church or in the ministry that you lead, whether it's in kids ministry or youth ministry or small group Bible study, whatever that might be. What motivates you to get out of bed to do those things? Is it just that desire, well, I have to serve? Or it's just something I've always done, or out of guilt or obligation. What motivates you in all these areas of your life, right? And when you think about motivation, what ultimately is motivating us to do these things comes down to our purpose, what we think our purpose is in fulfilling these things. And as I've been studying this topic more and more and reading about it and going to seminars about it, I've come to realize that very few people truly know what their purpose is. right? So many people are just living their lives, right? You go to your job, you're raising your families, you're just kind of doing your activities, you go to church, you go to your friends, you have your hobbies and your interests, and we're just kind of going through the motions of life without ever really asking ourselves the big questions. Things like why, what, how? And so I've been wrestling through those questions, particularly when it comes to my leadership. And not just my leadership in the church, but my leadership as a father, my leadership as a husband, my leadership out in the community, my leadership with hobby groups that I'm a part of, right? I've been asking myself these big questions, like things like, why am I here? Like, why am I involved with this group? Like, why do I do this? Why do I do this work? Why do I do this work at this place with these people? What's my role now with my kids, right? How can I love my wife better? How can I be a better friend to people? How can I be more of a blessing to my community? And so without knowing the answer to those questions, without knowing our purpose, we can actually become quite disheartened, especially as leaders. If we don't know why we're leading something, if we don't know what the purpose is behind it, we can become very disheartened, we can become discouraged, and I believe can even become quite depressed. And I believe that's where I was a number of years ago. And so this is what I've been kind of studying on and looking more into, is the huge importance for each and every one of us to truly know and be able to clearly articulate what is my purpose. Now, as a Christian, I believe that all of humanity has a purpose, right? And I believe humanity has a very specific purpose, right? And it's found in something that's called the Westminster Confession. And in this document, the Westminster Confession, it says this: the chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Now, I believe that is ultimately the purpose of every single human being on the planet. It's to know God, to bring glory to God, and to enjoy God forever. Pastor Rick Warren from Saddleback Church over in California, in his very famous book, The Purpose-Driven Life, it's a book that has sold more copies than any other book in human history apart from the Bible. Sold over 500 million copies. People desperately wanting to know what their purpose is. Pastor Rick stated in that book that every person has 5 purposes: to worship, to do ministry, to do evangelism, to do fellowship, and to do discipleship. Now again, in Pastor Rick's book and in the Westminster Confession, these are generic. Right? These are for every single human being. They're for everybody. But what about your specific purpose? You see, we're not all clones. We're not all carbon copies of one another. We are uniquely created by God. We uniquely serve God in our areas of ministry. We uniquely serve and work in our businesses, in our community. We have different abilities. We've got different skill sets. We have different personalities. We're all very unique. So can we actually determine what is our individual, our specific purpose? And I've come to believe that you can, right? And so what I've been working on over the last few weeks is to be able in my own life to clearly state a small, clear, and precise purpose statement. And what this purpose statement has done for me is it actually has given me more sense of drive. It's given me something to measure things against. It's actually given me a lot of encouragement and helped spur me on in so many different areas in my life. It's helped me to stay connected to the goals that I want to accomplish and the plans that I have. Right? And so in order to put this statement together, I'm going to kind of walk you through a very short process, but actually it's going to take a bit of work to think about this. And so I want to encourage you to do the hard work and think about this. So first, what you need to do is you need to break up your life into different parts. And I would encourage you to think of your life kind of in 5 different parts. Think of it in 5 different parts. The first is your personal life. The second is your family life. Third could be your church life. Fourth, your career life. And then finally, your friends and your hobby life. If you think of those 5 key areas of your life, think of those for a moment. Now, for some of you, like me, those areas will overlap one another. Like, for example, for me, my church life is my career life. My church life and career life interlaps with my family life and my friend life, because this is where I meet most of my friends and my family attend my church. So these kind of things can overlap a lot. But for most people, there's some overlap, but not a lot. So I want you to think of each of those areas and just maybe on a piece of paper, just jot out some statements, some words that you think is your purpose in that part of your life. And now the trick for this exercise is to try to do it in such a way that it's not so specific that you get pigeonholed into doing and accomplishing just one specific thing. For example, if you're thinking of your career, well, if you're going, well, my purpose at, company XYZ is to get 15 new clients in the next 6 months. That's my purpose. Well, what if you change jobs before that? What if you lose your job in that part of your career? Things like that. So when you're too specific, then those are kind of goals and objectives. That's not that higher level purpose that we're talking about. So you want this thing to be vague enough that you're not kind of boxed in to a goal or an objective, but you also want it detailed enough that it's measurable, that you can see it living out in your life. And so after you've spent a bit of time going through these 5 areas, then try to look for key themes that you see coming up in all of them. And then try to summarize those in one short, clear statement. And again, this statement, this purpose, ultimately becomes this big picture purpose that you feel is driving your life, and that you could live that purpose out, whether it's you're pastoring a church, whether you're working in a company, or whether you're lying in a hospital bed for the next 10 years. You could live out that purpose. So let me kind of walk you through a little bit how this has worked for me. So I've gone through this exercise and have spent all this time doing this, and so I have put together the following purpose statement. Now I'm still kind of tweaking it and changing it, so this is draft, kind of like 4.0, but I really believe my purpose is this. It's to be a spiritual father of many, equipping this generation to have a gospel impact on the generation to come. Let me say that again. I believe my purpose is to be a spiritual father of many, equipping this generation to have a gospel impact on the generation to come. Now let me break that down a little bit. I can look at this statement in so many different areas of my life. And there's kind of key words in here that are actually lived out differently depending on where I'm at. Right? For example, the first part is to be a spiritual father. Well, what does that mean? Well, that basically means I'm not living my life like I was when I was 18 years old. I'm not like an angry I'm like this angry Christian brother. It's like, no, I'm getting older now. Like I'm called to kind of be a spiritual father, to pass on what I've learned, to give fatherly advice, to love on people and to care for them and come alongside and support, right? And so this plays out differently. How I play the role of spiritual father with my kids is different than how I play out the spiritual father role at my church, where I'm leading. It can play out differently in a life group that I attend. It plays out differently in any hobby group that I'm a part of. So being a spiritual father will change based on where I'm at. Right? Also the idea of being a spiritual father to many, where I'm equipping them. Now I love the word equipping, because for me that means intentionality. It means I'm not just going through the motions. I'm not just hoping that it happens. But equipping means I'm going to intentionally be doing something about this. Not just going to go through life without thinking about it. I'm going to spend that time intentionally equipping. And then who do I want to equip? Well, I want to equip this generation. I live in this generation. And I don't mean people just my age, but I mean the people who are alive right now, whether they're senior citizens or whether they're young kids. Like, I feel that I can play a part in so many different people's lives, in the areas that I lead in the areas that I play in my family, community, and things like that. So this generation I want to be able to equip these people as a spiritual father would. And for what purpose? Well, for the purpose is to have an impact, to have a Jesus gospel impact on the generations to come. It's this idea of intentionally leaving a legacy. Everything that I have received, I want to pass on to the next generation so that they in turn will pass that on to the next generation as well. So again, this purpose statement of being a spiritual father of many, equipping generations to have a gospel impact on generations to come kind of fires me up. It gets me motivated to get out of bed. It gets me motivated to spend more time with my kids. It gets me motivated to kind of invest and love well on my wife. It impacts how I go out and play in the community. It goes out on doing podcasts like this and writing. I've started writing again and putting together some notes, and who knows, maybe in the next 10 years I'll write a book on something. But it just encourages me in all these different areas. So this has been a really exciting journey for me as a leader, and that's why I wanted to pass this topic on to you. So questions to ask yourself as we wrap this up is, have you ever considered your purpose? Now, I know it's a big question. It really is. I didn't do this overnight. This took weeks and weeks and weeks of work. But have you discovered your purpose? Have you considered your purpose, right? And how would knowing your purpose, could you actually see how this would motivate you more, that this would make you a better leader if you could do that? Well, hopefully the answer to that second question is yes. And so I would encourage you to spend that time, get a piece of paper, write out those 5 different key areas of your life and start working on this. If you'd like to send me a draft of your purpose statement, I'd love to see it. And if you'd like to get some feedback on it, I'd love to dialogue with you. Again, you could email those to me at kevin@greenbelt.church, or you could just put them in the comments below if you're not embarrassed about sharing those publicly. So again, I hope that this has been an encouragement to you in wherever you lead. I hope that this topic of clearly defining a purpose statement will help you grow as a leader wherever you are called to lead. Again, I appreciate you so much and just really thank you for taking the time to join me here on the podcast. Again, if you would subscribe and share this and comment, I appreciate it. Share this with your friends and get this out to as many people as possible to help just be a blessing to them. Because I truly believe that when we lead well together, that we can have a greater impact in our churches, in our community, in our city, and around the world. So until next time, take care and God bless.
Thanks again for joining us on the Leader Lifter podcast. If you are participating in the podcast through YouTube or a podcast player, you can find detailed notes and resource guides for each episode at kevinpresso.blogspot.ca. We hope you enjoy the podcast and find it helpful. If so, please subscribe to the podcast, rate us on iTunes or Google Play, and share it on your social media with your friends. Until next time, thanks for joining us.